Hi, and welcome back to the fourth episode of the Pathfinders podcast. I hope you have all enjoyed listening to the previous episodes so far with three huge creatives. Before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to tell you that we've just released some new prints that are available to order on our website. These video game prints by illustrator Jake Gunn are linked to our upcoming magazine and hide a lot of references from classic video game titles within it. Be sure to head over to our website on 99percentlifestyle.com to take a look and find out more. Today's episode features an interview with designer and entrepreneur Frankie Ratford. Frankie is an Australian designer and entrepreneur who runs the Design Kids, a company she founded which bridges the gap between studying and working within the graphic design industry. She started the Design Kids in 2009 and launched with a market stall in the front yard with some mates and just a DJ stall. The Design Kids is now a global online resource for thousands of students and graduate graphic designers, with many local offline communities around the world too. Their aim is to educate, inspire and connect young people to the design industry. Today's episode will look more at Frankie's story and how she started the Design Kids whilst balancing multiple day jobs. I hope you all enjoy listening to today's episode. Just to get things started, are you able to give people a quick introduction, just say who you are and tell me a little bit about yourself?
Okay, hi, my name's Frankie Ratford. I live in Australia and I run a company called the Design Kids, which bridges the gap between studying and working within the graphic design industry.
And could you tell me a bit about how you got involved into the world of design? Is that from education or something after education?
Oh, well, I actually, with it being English, I studied graphic design, I think when I was about 14, and totally fell in love with it. And it was my goal to be a graphic designer. And I also went to Australia on holiday the same year. And I decided I wanted to be an Australian graphic designer. So yeah, it was really good just to have that really key goal super early on. I think a lot of people struggle with things that just not knowing what they want to do.
And are you able to tell me a bit about, I suppose, your journey up until when you started the Design Kids? Are you able to tell me a bit more about what you was up to in between that period?
Sure. So I studied in England, and then when I was 18, I bought a one-way ticket to Australia. And I travelled. Originally, I had a spot in an English university, but deferred for a year. Because I just really, really, really wanted to go to Australia, and I didn't know how to apply to go to uni. It was very hard back in 2001. So I got into an English uni, deferred a year, went travelling around Australia, and while I was travelling, I got in to an Australian design course. So I moved over properly when I was 19 and started studying design for 4 years. And while I was studying, I went to a conference and I saw a guy called Vince Frost speak, and I just totally fell in love with him. I thought he was the greatest thing ever. And I was like, I really want to work for this guy. He's like absolutely amazing. And when I graduated, I managed to get a job there, which was really, really exciting. So I was 24, so it was exactly 10 years after I set the dream. So I was working at one of the best design studios in Australia as a graphic designer. And I was like, yes, awesome, made it. And then I realized that I was massively unhappy. And I was like, oh, I think I climbed the wrong mountain. And I was like, shit, now what do I do? And that was a bit of a shock for me. I had kind of a quarter life crisis. I was like, what am I doing with my life? I don't want this. Like, it just felt like it didn't fit me. It was like everything I wanted, but a really bad fit. And like, I remember, I hated the routine. I'm not a routine person. My parents are very self-employed. We used to go camping and jump in the car whenever we wanted. And, there was no sense of like, a corporate job. I remember going on holiday once with another family, and her dad couldn't come, and I said, where's your dad? And she's like, oh, he has to work, he doesn't have any holiday left. And I was like, I didn't even know what that sentence meant. So I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, you get 4 weeks a year. And I'm like, 4 weeks, like, what is that? And because I was so unaware of this was a thing in life. And so basically it was a bit of a shock for me to work full-time for someone. It's not a laziness thing. I work really hard, but I work hard in my own way, on my own hours. And I just found working 9 till 5 or 7 till midnight very hard. And I remember getting the bus into work one day. I was really, I think I went to the dentist or I had a doctor's appointment or something. And the bus at like 8:30 every day was so packed. It went from Bondi Beach to Surrey Hills same people every day, lots of hipsters, lots of black rimmed glasses, lots of beards. And yeah, I went in this one day, like an hour later, and there was no one on the bus. And I like skipped up the bus, and I just felt this like crazy sense of joy. And I almost just wanted to scream. I was so happy. And I was like, why do I feel like this? Like, I didn't even know what it was at the time, but looking back, it totally makes sense. It was just the freedom to break out of that routine. So yeah. And so basically I quit. So I was there for 18 months. I love Vince. I still do. I love Frost. It was just a really bad fit for me. And so I quit in the middle of the recession and just was like, but now what the hell am I going to do? And, you know, people didn't have jobs, and I was quitting one of the best jobs you could get at the time. But I just had to follow my heart. I was like dying inside. And I was like, I'd rather just see what happens. So yeah, I quit. I went traveling for 6 months. The idea was to do anything but design. I was like, I must be good at something else. I'd never even looked at anything else. It was always just design for me. And yeah, so I went traveling for 6 months. I went to New York the day Michael Jackson died. I went great picking in the south of France. I went hiking across Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. I went to Madagascar with my brother, and I had this amazing moment in Madagascar. We were hanging out with a guide called Amani. Well, his real name was Giorgio, but we called him Amani because they have lots of fake clothes over there. And Amani says to Joe and I, what do you do? And Joe says, I'm a teacher. And I said, I'm a graphic designer. And he didn't know what that was. So I normally just try and find something with words on it and point at it. And I was drinking a bottle of water, and I said, oh, we designed the label. And he was like, why? I'm like, yeah, that's a really good point. Like, you guys don't have any water, and I'm looking at the kerning like on the label. Like, I'm such a dick. I was like, I've just come from Surrey Hills. I've got my latte in one hand, and my iPhone in the other hand, and you know, I think I'm so cool. And then I go to Madagascar, and you give like these kids a hairband, and they're just like mind blown. Like, they're so grateful. They literally have nothing, and they're so happy. Like, they don't have an Xbox or like fucking, I don't know, surfboard or anything. They've got absolutely nothing, and they're just so happy and carefree and beautiful. And it was just such a eye-opening experience for me. And so I came back to Australia, and I was like, right, I want to help people. I want to make a difference, but designers are my people. So instead of being a designer, I was like, I can help other designers. So that brings us to November 2009.
Okay, and just before I ask a bit more about the Design Kids, was you going back to when you just left your job? Did you find that quite a scary thing to do? Because there will be a lot of people out there that perhaps don't love their job and kind of have that same feeling you did, but are too scared to take that leap, not knowing what to do once they have left.
You know what? I'm the worst person to ask that question to, because I actually just don't care. I think because I traveled for 2 years, and, you know, I had 5 jobs simultaneously twice in my life. And so my thing is, like, if I don't have enough money, I'll get another job. I've had 3 jobs, like, simultaneously 10 times. Like, whatever I need, I just kind of make that happen. So for me, like, I'm really good at waitressing. I love waitressing so much. I love talking to people. I love problem solving. And that was always a fallback for me. So I never kind of felt worried. I think when you go traveling and you have to survive, and you rock up in the most random place and you have to get a job, you know, I've turned up to like 25 cities and started from zero, and like had to, you know, earn money or find friends or whatever. And I think that makes you really resilient. And I just wasn't scared. I was more unhappy than I was scared. And when that balance is the right way round, then you kind of have to jump because you can't stay where you are. So yeah, I'm not the best person to ask of that, because like job security to me doesn't mean anything. Like, it doesn't bother me at all to be unemployed. To have no money in my bank account bothers me, but I'm really good at saving. I always have a safety net. That's like something I'm really, really good at. But not having a job doesn't bother me at all.
Okay, I find that really interesting. And something you said as well is that you like the idea of working for yourself. Did you attempt to start any other businesses or anything like that before the Design Kids?
Oh, that's a really good question. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But I'd always worked for so many people. Like, I'm not scared of getting my hands dirty. Like, I've given so many talks where, you know, I'm there an hour early and I'm putting out the chairs, and then people are turning up and I'm saying hi, da da da, and then the talk sucks and I jump on the stage and start talking, and they're like, Frankie, you're not meant to put out the chairs. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, there's no division for me. Like, I'm happy to help wherever I can. So yeah, but it's weird. No, I've never started another business.
Mm.
So, but I just got off the phone to my accountant 2 minutes before you called, about launching another company, which we'll talk about later.
Okay.
So yeah,
So,
that'll be number 2.
oh wow. And you mentioned that you went on this trip around the world where you was really exploring the world. At what stage did you realize, okay, this feels right now? I've got this idea to start the Design Kids. Can you tell me a bit about how that idea formed in your head?
Yeah, so I was going no design, no design, no design, and I ended up in London at a grad show. I can't remember which grad show it was, but they had a little shop where the students could sell their work. And I thought, oh my God, that's brilliant. Like, what if I go back to Australia and start a bigger shop? This was like before Society 6 or anything like that, where students can sell their work and the industry will buy them because they're like cutting edge designers. And they'll get famous and they'll get rich and maybe they'll get hired. And I had this really like grand plan. So I went back to Australia a month later, and I spent an hour on the business name. So the two options, I had loads of options, but they were rubbish. But the two options were aesthetically minded people and the Design Kids. And I went with the Design Kids because I like the idea that like emerging talent was younger. And I love, if I see anything with the word design in it, I'll look into it. So if it's a book or a TV show or I don't know, like whatever, the word design really turns me on. So like if I see the word design, it kind of sets the tone. So I wanted the word design or typography in my title. So yeah, so I went with the Design Kids. Then I spent an hour on the logo. Again, I didn't want to spend much time on this because I think designers, we can like get bogged down in perfection and not do anything. And my whole thing was just to start, just to launch something. So yeah, registered the name, got the logo, and off I went.
Mm.
Which sounds amazing, but like nothing happened.
I was going to ask what happened after that. How did you kind of get it off the ground, and how long did that take?
Oh my God. So I'm just trying to think what order things happen in. So basically, I spoke to a lot of friends, and I was like, do you want to design a T-shirt or a poster or a tote bag? And you know, I was buying like 10 tote bags at once and like screen printing them, and then I'd buy like a couple of rolls of tape and get them printed, and like it was so small and shit, but it was cute. I look back and I'm like, God, you're so cute. Like, look at you trying. It's so rubbish and it doesn't even matter. And I had a garage sale in my front yard, which was like the launch party, and my flatmate was a DJ, so she's like, I can DJ, and I was like, yeah, this sounds so good. In reality, it was so shit, because it was like very confusing what it was. It looked like a garage sale, so it was like all these products. My friends came, there's like maybe 20 people there. There was a DJ, so it kind of looked like a house party, and then it was like this weird shop, so people didn't really know what it was, so they're just walking past. But we had a great time. We all had beers. My friends all bought something. Like one of them messaged me last week and she's like, where did you get that T-shirt printed? I've still got it. It's still going. And so I really owe so much to those guys, like for buying all my shitty things and just supporting me. Cause like sometimes you just need that little push and then you're like, cool, this is a thing. So I probably made $0 on that because I had to make everything. So it wasn't a financial success, but it was the beginning. So I started looking around for other jobs. So like I was saying before, it's just about an income thing. So I was like, I need to get an income from somewhere else. But I also wanted to teach myself how to do my own job, because I didn't actually know how to make things and promote them or start a community or build. Like I just literally didn't know anything. Sorry, I'm just shutting the door. And so it's a bit loud outside. So I basically started getting jobs to teach me how to do my own job. So I got 4 other jobs. So one of them was working at a design market in Sydney, and my job was to interview all the makers, which was amazing because I was a graphic designer. I knew how to pick paper samples and design a logo, but I didn't know how to get something made or like promote it or anything. So I got to ask all those guys all the questions, and then it went on their blog, and they had a huge readership, finders keepers. So that was really cool. And then I started lecturing. Actually, I was lecturing at a university 2 nights a week and at a private school 2 days a week, and that was really good for the income. But also, it was like kind of market research. I got to ask the students every week what they were struggling with, what they needed help with, and I got to see firsthand what the gaps were, basically.
And how long was you doing these other jobs for alongside the Design Kids before it became your sole employment?
So I did other jobs for 4 years. So it was a long time. And yeah, basically the teaching. So I was in Sydney for an extra 2 years after Frost. And then I moved to Byron Bay. I retired when I was 27. 1 second. And yeah, so I moved to Byron Bay and I got a warehouse and I lived upstairs, and I built a co-working space downstairs, and I had a gallery, and it was awesome. And then I started teaching in Brisbane, which is a 3-hour drive away, 2 days a week to fund everything. And it was awesome because I started looking at what Design Kids was and like what was I trying to do. And my whole premise was to bring a student and a creative director together and get them talking. And so I started running these exhibitions, and it was so awesome because I was earning enough money in 2 days that I could have 5 days off to do whatever I wanted. So it was like the opposite of everyone else. And it was awesome. So I started running these exhibitions, and it just kind of blew up. And then I made a website around the exhibitions. So because the students were like, oh, where are the cool studios in Brisbane? And I was like, just look at the exhibition poster and Google the studios. And then they didn't know like if one was editorial or another one was digital. And so then on the website, I started kind of profiling all the studios. So figuring out why, like telling a bit of their story to introduce them to the students. And then that kind of blew up. And then we just kept working on the website and turning it into a resource. And the exhibitions were so successful. Like a lot of students got jobs from the exhibitions, from the collaborations, because we picked like the top 20 studios in each city. And then we'd open submissions for the student half, and we'd get like 600 submissions. So if you pick the best 20 out of that, they're all really good. And then I'd match them stylistically with the studios. And then, of course, if it's a cultural fit, a lot of them got hired. And some of them are still working there. It's crazy. I've seen it on LinkedIn. I'm like, whoa, like that person still works there. Like I did that. That's insane. So yeah, that was really good. And when that started blowing up, we just kind of dropped the shop because I was like, you know what? No one needs a t-shirt, but everyone needs a job. So maybe I'll just stop concentrating on the shop and start figuring out how we can double down on the other stuff. So yeah, we did 16 exhibitions in 4 years. No, 3 years. We had 740 people take part. It was crazy. It was insane.
Was there any point up until that point where I suppose there was a tough period where you kind of had perhaps second thoughts whether or not this was going to work or if this was perhaps the right thing to do or stuff? Did you have kind of any blips in the road as such?
I think the cool thing was I didn't put any pressure on it. So because I had 4 other jobs, I was busy and I was like learning, and it was all positive. So there was no financial pressure. There was no pressure at all, which was amazing because it was only fun. So it was like, let's run these exhibitions. We're not selling shirts. Let's build a website. But there was like, no deadline for a website or like, everything was just done on my terms. So at that point there was no stress, which was great. And I do tell people that if they're going to start something, like get a job on the side where you can earn money for like 2 or 3 days, because you don't want a full-time job, because then there's no energy left for your other thing. If you can get a job where you're earning the most amount of money in the shortest period of time, then it frees up your time to do your business, and actually your time is much more precious than the money.
Yeah.
And your attention. So that was, the first 4 years was great. It was really easy. So I was living in Byron, driving to Brisbane every Wednesday morning. So it's a 3-hour drive. And then I'd teach all day, sleep in a hostel, and then teach all Thursday or half of Thursday, and then drive back to Byron, and I was done for the week. And it's just such a nice way of working, because it was like just so efficient where you could just earn really good money. So when I moved to Byron, it's like a little surf town in Australia, and I worked out I could work 96 hours making coffee, or I could work 12 hours in Brisbane teaching for the same amount of money. And so a 6-hour commute to me was totally fine, because it actually didn't matter. Whereas most people would be like, I'm not driving 3 hours. And I was like, it's relative income. It's not income. So that was amazing. The first 4 years was pretty sweet, but then the trouble kicks in.
Okay.
You just wait, my friend. So after 4 years, I decided that I was going to drive around Australia, because it was still only Australian for a really long time. Like anytime there was like any design news and it wasn't Australian, I was like, I don't want to know. Like, I want to be, my brand is Australian. I just want to help Australians, blah, blah, blah. And so I decided I was going to drive around Australia and build the design kids, build the community. I would give talks at the universities. I would interview creative directors. I would run workshops, and I would be doing these exhibitions, and I would basically build this community from the ground up by actually physically going there. And so that was really cool. I got a sponsor for, I think it was $10,000. So I thought I was like so rich. I was like, woohoo! I never have to work again. That probably would have just covered petrol, to be fair. But it was like the most amount of money I'd ever heard of. And I was, I was in my warehouse. I should rewind a little bit. And I was really bored, because I was too comfortable. I had like a massive space. I was earning good money. I was surfing. I was hanging out with my friends, and I just wasn't pushing myself. And I actually just don't really like being comfortable. I love the hustle and the learning, and I'm addicted to that learning curve, and it just flattened out. And I was like, nah, I need to change this up. So I started thinking about what the opposite of a warehouse would be. And I was like, the opposite would be a van. And like the smallest space possible. So I sold everything I owned, got rid of the warehouse, bought a van, got this $10,000 sponsorship, and I was like, good to go. And then a week before I was leaving, I got a call from the sponsor, and they just got bought out by someone else. And she said, I'm so sorry, Frankie, we can't sponsor your trip anymore, but you've got other sponsors, right? And I was like, yeah, it's totally fine. Like, hung up the phone. I was like, oh my God. Because at the moment I was surviving off a teaching wage, and we get paid really well during the term time, but at the holidays you don't get paid at all. So I hadn't actually worked for like 5 months, because the summer holidays over here are so long. It's like November, December, January, February, and then you go back at the beginning of March. So I literally had like $60 in my bank account, and I was like, oh my God, this is a disaster. I've got a van, $60. I told everyone I was driving around Australia. I'm homeless, and I have a well-paid job in Brisbane. And I think at that point, like, a lot of people would panic. But I kind of like got off on it a little bit. Like, I love having a problem to solve, and I was like, this is a massive problem. My life has just imploded. What am I going to do? And I was like, right. Okay, well, if I can drive to work, I can probably just fly to work. So I decided to do both. I'm a big fan of have your cake and eat it. And I decided that I would do the road trip and I would keep my job and I would just fly to work each week and fund it myself.
Wow.
So that's what I did for like a year. I flew to Brisbane every Wednesday morning and then I flew back Thursday night to wherever my van was and then kept driving. And yeah, it was amazing. It was like totally crazy. Like I was parking in the sketchiest places because like airport parking is very expensive. And so I'd park near the airport, kind of like areas where you would dump a body, like that kind of vibe. And I'd pull up there on a Tuesday night, like kill the engine, don't turn any lights on, and then I'd like climb over the seat into the back and I'd get changed in the dark, put all my clothes in a pile so I could find them, get into my bed, set my alarm for like 3 a.m. and then the alarm would go off, I'd get dressed, like get out the van really quietly, shut the door, walk in the dark to the airport, which normally involve running across highways because for some reason they don't design airports to walk into. So I was like running across these highways at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and then flying to Brisbane, getting a train to the university, prep my class, and then by the time the class started at 10, I'd already been up for 7 hours. So it was yeah, it was pretty brutal. I was pretty tired. My students used to call me Cranky Frankie because I was just like, shut up, like you guys are so lazy. And you know, they'd be like, oh, we're tired, we need to get a coffee, and I'm like, don't even, like, let's not talk about that. And then yeah, sleep in a hostel, and then the next day teach all day, and then fly back to my van and then drive off. And it was really exhausting, but it was also so epic because I love travel and I love design and I love them pretty equally. And I'd never been able to do both. So when I was traveling for 2 years before uni, I really lacked purpose. And then when I was at uni for 4 years, I missed my freedom. And it was just this weird, like alternating where I could only have one at once. And that trip was just like, oh my God, I can actually have both. And so I was really tired, but I was also really happy. So yeah, so I funded that whole year myself.
Wow, that's crazy. There's so many questions I've got based on what you just said. There's I'll get into more of the community stuff in a bit if that's okay, because I know that's something that I want to explore. But I find it amazing how you was able to sustain that lifestyle and also build up a business in kind of that scenario you was in. So your mindset must have been very positive and very driven, and it shows that you kind of are capable of doing a lot when you set your mind to something and you have the drive to do so from that story you just said.
This question actually comes up a lot, like where do I get my energy from? And like, so I'm a big fan of the 4 Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss, and it's less about working for 4 hours and more about lifestyle design and what you actually want to do. So when I designed my life, I designed it based on things I'm good at. So I'm really good at remembering people's names. I love humans. I love parallel parking. I love design. I love talking. I love being enthusiastic about people. I love nurturing people. And I just designed my life around the things I'm good at. So naturally, you have a lot of energy because you're excited about it. So there's nothing on that list that I suck at or I find hard. So like that really is such an easy motivator because it's like it's all fun. I mean, it's not all fun, but it's like on the surface it's pretty good because you've made that decision of what that looks like. And I mean, if it sucked, then I'd be a pretty bad designer because I designed it badly. So I think a lot of that drive actually just comes from doing things I like and being able to get out of bed every day and like and love my life.
Yeah, yeah. And also I think it comes back to what you mentioned earlier about having that the whole job aspect of you not worried about being unemployed and really being able to not kind of fall into that security of worrying about the finances too much, if that makes sense. Where a lot of people think would in that scenario where, say for instance, the sponsor's just gone and I think most people would have stuck by and just stuck to the teaching job rather than traveling around the world.
I think because I mean the other thing I do really well is I tell everyone what I'm doing, And so that actually brings huge accountability with it, where people are like, aren't you doing that trip around Australia? And you're like, oh yeah, I didn't do it. I will never say that. I'm the person that does it. Like, people will say, I'll meet some random on a plane and they'll be like, I live in Estonia, come and stay with me. I'm like, oh, I will. Like, I'll be there. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, no, I'm the person that shows up. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think accountability is huge, because if you just keep everything to yourself, like, you have no accountability. And so you just don't do it. Whereas I think a lot of my stuff is like peer pressure, because I told everyone I was going to do it, and I have a big mouth, so it's like, and then I actually have to go and do it, otherwise I look like an idiot. So I like making myself like fall in these traps, because it actually motivates me to get stuff done.
No, I find that really fascinating. I find it quite inspiring myself, actually. With the whole community aspect around the design kids as well, where you was going to these new places and kind of starting from zero and building them up. Did you have kind of a plan that you applied for every time you did that? Because I know you said you did workshops, talks, but did you kind of follow a certain structure every time and it seemed to work, or was it very much a case of you just tried different things in different cities?
I'm just trying to think, because at that point it was just me. So that was one of the struggles, actually, was, so let's say I was in Sydney. So I'd just been in Brisbane for a month and I was going to Melbourne the following month, but I was in Sydney that month. So in Sydney, it was like past, present, future. So the past stuff, so Brisbane, the exhibition had launched and was running that month. So I was like promoting that. In Sydney, I was doing the present stuff. So I was going to the meetings with the studios and the schools, giving talks, being really present. And they were working on the exhibition, but it hadn't launched yet. And then in Brisbane, in Melbourne, we were doing the call out for the exhibition. So you're actually always in 3 places at once. So when I moved to Melbourne, then I was doing the call out in Adelaide, the present stuff in Melbourne, and launching the Sydney exhibition. So you're always kind of doing 3 cities at once. So I had a bit of a structure, like how to do that. But yeah, it's definitely been refined over the years.
So would you say that the success of the Design Kids it kind of comes from, yeah, because of that global community that you went for?
Yeah, 100%. Because communities are humans. Like, I think the word community gets thrown around a lot now. And every startup, it's like, build your community, build your tribe, sell to them, blah blah blah. And for me, for a long time, like, I just like humans. I was doing it because I wanted to do it, not because I thought it was a good business decision. And I actually care about them. And it's like, I know where this creative director started out. I know what their dog is called. I know their kid's name. I know where their intern studied. And they're real people, and I know all this information about them. And it's like, I actually care. And for me, that is a community. It's like a network of people that care about each other. Whereas I think when you build communities online, like, it's just a username. It's just a profile picture. That's not a community to me. That doesn't feel real. It's just a collection of random people. There's no support or love or any bonding whatsoever. So for me to do it in person is like super, super important to our brand.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. That's actually something I would like to do with perhaps the next issue of the magazine, and perhaps do more of like a launch event type with it for the issue to kind of get it into more the physical world. Yeah, because I always find it good to get it out there.
I love it too. Like, that's why I do my job. I love these humans. I love seeing them. It's like, that's the best part of my day.
Yeah, I totally get that, because that's kind of, because this magazine is just kind of me doing the interviews as well. It's born from kind of me having a fascination with learning from other people, I guess, and that's kind of just a translated product the magazine is. So I can relate to a lot of that. And in terms of the community aspect to what the Design Kids is about, I saw on the website that you talked about how students should actually become part of a community before they look for the job and become part of a creative community. Can you talk more about that and why that is important?
Yeah, so I think, students will come up to me and they say, oh, I emailed 100 studios, no one replied, I can't get a job, this sucks. And it's like, they don't owe you anything. Like, they're all running a business. Their priority is not to entertain you in the nicest way. But if you know people, then they have a responsibility to you. They like you. They like want to help you out. So for me, it's like crazy that students, like I'll say to them, where do you want to work? And they go, I don't mind. And you're like, what do you mean you don't mind? You need to make this decision, and like be a lot more specific about what you're looking for, because then they know it's a good fit as well. It's not just a generic fit. But also you need to know like who you need to know, and like where you need to be, and what networks and communities you need to be part of. If you're just kind of sitting at home emailing people, you're not going to get very far. So yeah, it's like so important for the students. I love it actually, because I do workshops to like at universities, and mostly it's third year students that are about to finish, but ideally it would be first years. And so I'm like, guys, this is how you use university for the next 3 years. So when you finish, you're sorted. Like that's what they should be doing. And it's crazy that it's like a week before the end, and it's like, guys, you need to do a resume, and they're like, what? And they've got nothing to put on their resume because they didn't know they had to do it. And it's just this weird knowledge gap that I literally see everywhere.
So one of the questions I did want to ask you, especially from the education background that you have in lecturing, what would you say is the worst piece of advice you hear people giving to other people or design students?
Oh, this is so easy. Put everything in your portfolio. So show that you can be an illustrator, you can build apps, you can code, you can do branding, you like editorial. Show you can do it all, because then you'll get a job. And it's like, are you joking? Like that's literally the worst thing you could do. My friend runs a packaging studio in Sydney called The Creative Method, and he said, you know, we get folios all the time, and there's no packaging in their folios. And they say, why do you want to work here? And they're like, oh, I love what you do. And it's like, do you? Like, you just want a job. Whereas he said, you know, if someone walked in the door and just said, I love packaging, and didn't even have a folio, he's like, I would rather hire that person, because at least they're passionate about it. So for a studio trying to hire, they need to see some alignment in your folio with what they do. And their studio has some kind of niche. It might be the type of work they do. It might be the type of clients they have. It might be the industry. It might be the location, whatever. If you can align with that, then you've got like a 90% more chance of getting a job with them, because they can see you in their environment. If you walk in with a shit show of a folio that shows like a million different things that are like 70% good, then they're not going to hire you, because everyone has the same portfolio. It's crazy. Like, I just think that's the absolute worst thing they could do, is show everything they can do.
I hope you all enjoyed listening to today's episode with Frankie Ratford. This podcast is now available on YouTube and all major podcast platforms, so make sure to give us a follow or subscribe to be notified of all new episodes coming out in the future. If you would like to follow us on social media, then all the links can be found on the 99% Lifestyle website or in the description of this episode. At the end of each interview I conduct, I ask interviewees to give me 5 recommendations for our audience. This can be from books you should read, musicians you haven't heard of before, to other podcasts to listen to and documentaries you need to watch. These recommendations are sent out as a free newsletter each and every week to the 99% Lifestyle newsletter subscribers. The newsletter is called Creative Recommendations, and all our issues are archived on our website too. If you would like to read Frankie's recommendations, then head over to the 99% Lifestyle website, head to the newsletter page, and then click on issue number 134. If you sign up to our newsletter, then you will also be updated about new podcast episodes, blog posts, and various product releases, from our print magazines to our new video game prints in collaboration with illustrator Jay Gunn. Thank you again for listening to today's episode. We'll be back very soon.